Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 893. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today is December 6th, 2024.
All right, audience, all you people way out yonder who are actually watching this on YouTube, look behind me. Yes, I'm in Florida, but there's gray skies this morning for some reason in Florida, and it affects my mood when I wake up to gray skies. I know for all people out in England and Ireland, it's like this all the time, Kevin. Our viewers from Portland and Seattle, that's all we got, Kevin, is the dark. Now you know how we feel, and I get it. But I've enjoyed like 6 weeks of pure sunshine, so it's a little surprising. George, it's not always this way, is it?
No, but it's Advent, the 3 weeks of the year where it's cold, wet, and gloomy. And then about beginning Christmas, it starts to warm up. Winter is over, and it's wonderful. I just noticed over my chair, you can see I've got my purple stole and my blue stole, and whenever I go out to worship, go to the building, I always have to take both stoles because I never know what the altar guild's going to set up the altar to look like. So I got to be prepared whether they're going to do purple today or blue today. They're so proud of themselves that they have two sets that they can use.
That's good, though. All right, so yeah, it's Advent. We've exited ordinary time. We're prepping for Christmas time, but Advent is here in the meantime, and lots of news to talk about. First, quick update. George and I had our annual Thanksgiving dinner at Seasons 52 in Tampa. Here's some pictures and fun we had. And we've been doing this every year for at least, Jill and I have done this for 5 years. And I think you and I have done this for 3 or 4 years. And it's just a time when Americans...
Longer than that, 5 years,
probably.
I think.
Yeah, okay. Americans spend one day a year being thankful, which is sad. We should do it every day. But in as such, George and I, as empty nesters, have found a way to have Thanksgiving. Yes? There you go.
4 years. We did it once. We've done it once in the Orlando and 3 times in Tampa.
There you go. And we found a way to be empty nesters and enjoy Thanksgiving with no chaos, no hassle, no fuss. We go to a nice gourmet restaurant and have turkey dinner, a drink, pictures, hugs, and we say goodbye. It's simple. We're family.
You, Jill, and my wife have turkey. I have to have fish because I'm fat and can't have carbohydrates. So there you go.
Poor George. All right, let's move on to the news here. Bring up my news page. We got lots to discuss. I have a video here I'm going to play. And in order to do this, I have to do a couple things so George and I can hear it at the same time. I'm going to go up here and click that button there. I'm going to go over here and click this button.
My lords, it is often said, and it is a cliche to say it, but hey, I'm the Archbishop still, that if you want to make God laugh, make plans. Well, on that basis, next year I will be causing God more hilarity than anyone else for many years, because the plans for next year were very detailed and extensive. If you pity anyone, pity my poor diary secretary, who's seen weeks and months of work disappear in a puff of a resignation announcement. The reality, which I wish to start with and then pay some thanks and then talk about housing, the reality is that there comes a time, if you are technically leading a particular institution or area of responsibility, where the shame of what has gone wrong, whether one is personally responsible or not, must require a head to roll. And there is only, in this case, one head that rolls well enough. I hope not literally. One of my predecessors in 1371, Simon of Sudbury, had his head cut off, and it was then the peasants, the revolting peasants at the time, played football with it at the Tower of London. I don't know who won. It certainly wasn't Simon of Sudbury. The reality is that the safeguarding and care of children and vulnerable adults in the Church of England today is thanks to thousands and tens of thousands of people across the church, particularly in parishes, in parish safeguarding officers, is a completely different picture to the past. And however, when I look back at the last 50 or 60 years, not only through the eyes of the Making Report, however one takes one's view of personal responsibility, it is clear that I had to stand down, and it is for that reason that I do so.
Okay. I guess we're going to have to talk about this because let me reposition myself. You can hear me right, George? You got me?
Yes, I can.
All right, good. So that is Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, giving his last, final speech to the House of Lords Parliament, in which what did he do? All right. Ronald Reagan is very famous for saying, "The buck stops here." Justin Welby could have said, "The cross stops here. This is where I say I'm sorry, I resigned. I, as the head of the church, have failed those victims." And he did not do that. He made light of it. Now, George, I'm a funny guy. I can crack jokes. I can keep people entertained. I can become the life of the party. And I enjoy doing that. I don't know if Justin found himself in a very uncomfortable position and said, now it's a time to be funny and humorous for the sake of what? I'm beyond reason trying to figure out what Justin was trying to communicate here. It's beyond reason, can he resign again? Because this is ridiculous. George, let's talk a little bit about the video we just watched.
Yes, it took place yesterday. And I think my response was akin to that of the Bishop of London, who was seated, Sarah Mullally, who was seated next to him.
Mm-hmm. The lady doing this.
Who was so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. She probably knew some of what he was going to say, but her discomfort at his words were palpable. Oddly enough, Martin Seeley, Bishop of St. Edmundsbury in Ipswich, one of the people named to the Macon Report, was sitting in back of him, and he was looking a little smug and jokey. We really saw two Justin Welbys here. We saw the old Etonian talking about the revolting peasants and basically making light of a serious situation. We also saw the deeply wounded man who realized that he's messed up his career. And those two conflicting people came together, and it just didn't work. He made jokes about his poor diary secretary, and if you pity anybody, pity that person.
What about the victims?
He's talking about an abuse scandal, and that he's taking the consequence. He seemed to suggest that he was taking the hit for the wrongs done by other people. That he was not personally liable or guilty or ashamed, but that a head had to roll, and his was the one that was above the parapet, so it was his. He was trying to be noble, but also he was very ignoble. Helen Ann Hartley was brought on to Channel 4 by Kathy Newman. For Americans, Kathy Newman basically was that woman interviewer who many years ago had that back and forth with Jordan Peterson that saw hundreds, maybe
millions,
million views million views.
You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while.
Well, Kathy Newman is running with this story until there's no left of it. So if the Church of England hopes she's going to get tired of it, no way. This is her ticket to the big time. Well, she talked to Helen Ann Hartley, and Helen Ann Hartley said that Archbishop Welby was being insensitive. He really did not have an appreciation of the gravity of the situation. Now, Helen Ann Hartley has been ostracized by the other bishops. Nobody has stood up to do what she has done and say Justin was right to go. She may have had private words of support, But she basically is reporting that, the institutions, the Church of England blob is keeping everybody in line. And so Ian Hislop, who's the editor of Private Eye, had a little column the other day where immediately after Welby resigned, the next day was a very formal affair at the British Museum. And Welby was there, and Welby was swanning around with the other members of the great and good British society, and they were all saying, "Oh, how noble of you, Archbishop, how wonderful, you're taking this like a man." And Hislop basically confronted him about his crimes, and Welby just looked blank and, didn't really answer. So that Welby had no real knowledge or sense of why he's going, other than that somebody had to take the hit. Mm-hmm. Well, he put out an apology this morning, Justin Welby did, an apology for his apology, where he said he was sorry for being insensitive. But he continues to say his shame is for the failures of the Church of England, not his own shame. Now, is that he being psychological? Is this the only way he can handle this issue? By basically saying it wasn't me, it was the dog who ate my homework?
I don't know. Well, just go back to recent history, the last 5 or 6 years. The victims wanted to meet with the Archbishop of Canterbury. They had requested a meeting. He had promised meetings that, I'll meet with you, and that never occurred until recently. So does he just not understand why he got fired and had to resign? Does he not? Maybe it's just a lack of understanding. Maybe it's that middle management business training he has. But you represent so much more than just the Archbishop of Canterbury. You are the leader of the Anglican Communion. You are the leader of the Church of England. And as a leader, when something that you're in charge of for 8, 9, 10 years is failing and producing more victims, and you don't have the ability to stop it, you're out. Sorry. That's how it works.
Well, when he was, all those years ago, when he was thinking about ordination, he was presented to the Bishop of Kensington in London. And the Bishop of Kensington said, you just don't have what it takes. And Welby went back to the HTB crowd, Holy Trinity Brompton, and they sort of circumvented this no and got him into the ordination track, and life took off after that. Well, what was it that the Bishop of Kensington saw all those years ago that would say that, obviously well-educated, well-connected, well-meaning person didn't have what it took to be a parish minister, parish priest? And we saw that again yesterday. He didn't have, is it empathy? Is it pastoral awareness of his situation? One of the things a bad pastor does is, like, if somebody tells you, oh my mother's just died, my son was hit by a car, my wife is a drug addict, and a bad pastor will say, oh well, you think you've had it tough.
I've had it worse, yeah.
I've had it worse. Mm-hmm. Now, we all may think that inside. That's a natural human response. When we hear the sufferings of others, to think about our own sufferings. But Welby is putting his own suffering front and center, and his response, rather than the sufferings of those who were victimized by his inactions, by his callousness.
Now, there is truth to this in the fact that since he's been in office, he's learned stuff about his family he did not know. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he's gone through some pain and discovery, hopefully some self-discovery in as such, but this was just the oddest thing I've seen on video in a long time. And put in the comments, what do you think is going on? Does Justin understand why he had to resign? Why don't you put that in the comments?
And also, I think I would like to be sensitive to, is there an English cultural thing going on here that, in the face of great shame, horror, shock, and dismay, he did the culturally appropriate thing by being jokey and making light of it? Mm-hmm. And maybe he was addressing the immediate audience around him of other members of the great and good, lords and bishops, rather than addressing the nation. And if he were addressing the nation, would he have done it differently? Who knows? But,
well, as odd, yeah. Well, it's odd things, you know.
Well, but as I said, the Cathy Newman engine and the survivors groups, they're not letting go. Welby's not enough. We've had the first Episcopal casualty. Jo Bailey Wells had her permission to officiate withdrawn by Sarah Mullally, the Bishop of London. Bailey Wells is the Bishop to the Bishops of the Anglican Communion, Deputy Secretary of the Anglican Consultative Council, all these bureaucratic make-work jobs. In 2013, she was Welby's chaplain. She knew about all these things, and it was somebody else's problem to deal with. I'm not going to do, somebody else will take care of this, not my job. And the Diocese of London has stood her down to see if she's currently a safeguarding risk, which is not, nobody's suggesting that she's doing bad things now. It's what she did 10 years ago. So she may get hers back, but, we've had the first, but here's the thing, the result, last week, Mullally suspended or withdrew the PTO of 3 clergy listed parish-type clergy, priests. Hugh Palmer, Sue Coleman, and Rico Tice. This week, Jo Bailey Wells. The Diocese of Oxford, I'm not aware of withdrawing anybody's PTO, and there are people there. So the response is uneven, but at least some response is taking place. But Bailey Wells' attitude essentially was that of Welby's. Not my problem. You revolting peasants, don't bother me. I have more important things to do.
Let's hope she finds some more important things to do outside of the church. Rumors. Hey, Stephen Cottrell, he's got to go. This is it. This is his final moment. He should be saying goodbye to any moment now on Twitter. And no, lo and behold, he is surviving this controversy fairly well. He says he will not resign. He has apologized for the church's failings and the need to learn lessons. Let's learn some lessons here. However, in order to avoid learning lessons or learning from other people, he's turned off his comments on Twitter. Okay.
Yeah, he has taken the path of avoidance. He's putting out these Advent reflections and talking about prayer and this and that. And people on social media, Twitter in particular, have just savaged him for being tone deaf and clueless. And Cathy Newman has recently interviewed Matthew Innocent, a former Church of England priest, who when he was a young man in the 80s was abused by another Church of England priest, Trevor de Vamenicam. I've never been able to pronounce that. When de Vamenicam was at St. Aidan's Church in Bradford. Innocent in 2013 told Archbishop St. Tamu and Glyn Webster, the Bishop of Beverley, who was a flying bishop, one of the good guys, and nothing was done. And Cottrell knew that nothing was done. And Innocent said to Cathy Newman, Cottrell hasn't taken action against those who've ignored disclosures of abuse and those who just will not apologize for their actions, such as St. Tamu. So the survivors' lobby is now calling upon Cottrell to go. Cottrell is cut from a different cloth than Justin Welby. And he's a bit of a bruiser, a bit of a bully at times, in a different way than Justin Welby.
Right.
So that he may hold on and just say the hell with you. It's a different strategy, though, that Martin Seeley, who we saw in the back row of Welby's film, St. Edmundsbury and Ipswich, and the Bishop of Lincoln, Conway, they're basically trying to wait this out. They're going low, not saying anything, not doing anything. They're hoping that the storm will pass them by. I don't see it happening.
I mean, have we had but 10 bishops speak to this in the last 2 weeks from the Church of England?
Not even that. Well, everybody and their uncle commented on Welby's resignation.
Mm-hmm.
But as to the issues that led to Welby's resignation, no, except for Helen Ann Hartley,
yeah,
I can't think of anyone who's been very clear or very. I've mentioned this now several weeks in a row. She's the only man among the group.
She has the most testosterone amongst the other bishops. I mean, and I said this 2 or 3 episodes ago. When Archbishop Welby first took office, he started to surround himself with people who supported him, who were the yes men, who were there to look out for him. He did not surround himself with people who would hold him accountable and would show him the way if he were going astray and off the rails. And when you become in that type of position in a Christian ministry, as the Archbishop of Canterbury, you need people who will hold you accountable. You're not this titulary head. If you think you are, you're going to be resigning in 8 years. Oh, well, look, it happened here. It just doesn't work that way. You need to not just be the leader of the believers. You need to be the believer. And here he has failed. Let's move on to you. I never expected this to be part of a story on Anglican Unscripted, but we have prayer book reform happening around the world with different provinces. Let's talk a little bit about this and what it means in the long run.
Well, I'm going to start off by offending people.
Uh-oh.
The liturgy Nazis are on the march. Okay. There's nobody crueler, meaner, nastier than a liturgist fighting with another liturgist. In this time of uncertainty, in this time of change, in this time of rapidly changing social, economic, political, and moral climate, everybody and their uncle's talking about prayer book reform. Yesterday, the Scottish Episcopal Church denounced experimental prayers and rites for morning and evening prayer. South Africa, they're doing a whole new revision of their Eucharistic prayers, and they're adding a bunch of people to the calendar of saints. Some people worthy, I think, like John William Kallsen. Some purely political, like Stephen Biko, the anti-apartheid activist who was murdered.
And a movie made
about Philippines, they had their executive council meeting last week, and the Philippines said, we've got this prayer book we got from the American Episcopal Church, but it's still in English, and we should translate it into Tagalog, the main language of the Philippines for the main island of Luzon. Well, the bishops in southern Philippines and the bishops of northern Philippines who don't speak Tagalog said, no, let's translate it into our local languages. And they don't have the money to translate it into 10 different languages, so they're fighting, well, how do we translate this into, how do we decolonialize our prayer book and make it a lived language for everybody whose English is a second language? Now, meanwhile, the Episcopal Church is chugging along with gay marriage rights. Things formally haven't changed since the last General Convention, but the committees are beavering away, and in some of the meetings of the House of Bishops, they've been getting updates, and what looks like it's going to happen right now is that we're going to have an Episcopal solution. We're going to have gay marriage rights, but it's not going to be in the book in your pew. What they're going to do is have Rite 1 is the current rite marriage, and then Rite 2, they're going to have, instead of this man and this woman, this couple or these people. So if you're really thick, you won't know what's going on. But if you're gay, you can have this. And this liturgy will be printed separately, as they say, on the cloud.
I was going to say, it's in the cloud. Yeah, it's not in book form.
So it'll be official in that sense, but I don't have to download it. I don't have to buy it, and I don't have to buy new prayer books. So they've decided not to do a wholesale prayer book revision. Costs too much money, and they don't want prayer book revision to be driven by the gay issue. They want it to be driven by sort of the higher, here's where the liturgical Nazis come in, ooh, we need to move the comma here. Ooh, where do we put this and that? And meanwhile, prayers of living in love and faith are chugging along just fine. Martin Snow, in a video address to, I forget which diocesan synod, said that, within a year or so, we'll have these all done, and they'll be optional, and we'll have standalone gay marriage services. So why is this all happening? I think it's because we're in a vacuum time.
Well,
we're in a vacuum time. We're in a time of, just like we had prayer book revision in the 70s in the United States when we had women priests and civil rights and all these things fighting, let's throw in prayer book revision so we can basically make compromises on each of these things rather than solve them one at a time to everyone's satisfaction. We'll just do a grand compromise and try to, do it all at once.
But if the law of prayer is the law of belief, this is a way that they can rewrite their doctrine in a time of vacuum. Mm-hmm. And a lot of places, Church of England, the Episcopal Church, say they have not changed their doctrine. But if you're changing your prayer book, you are, in effect, changing your doctrine.
And it also speaks to my experience of being a priest, technically not 30 years. I think it's 28 or 29 years, but getting there. Mm-hmm. Nobody uses 90% of the prayer book. Oh. I probably am the only priest in my diocese that uses the daily offices consistently. I'm saying some people do, and whenever we have clergy meetings, they ring it out to all this and that. But nobody really goes through the litany, goes through the morning and evening prayer. It's a dead thing in our prayer books. And so when these are revised or new people are added to the calendars, it doesn't matter. Because for 99 9/10 of the people in the pews, all that matters is what they get on Sunday morning, and it's what they're used to.
Their Eucharist. Now, we talked, you mentioned the prayer book changes in the Episcopal Church in the 70s. That did affect doctrine and some understanding. It was kind of, if you ask me, it was the Vatican II of the Episcopal Church. The liberal changes were that noticeable. Some people say, hey, I've never left the 1662. I've never left the 1928. I don't think many people say I never left the 1979.
Well, it's been the thing is, I'm comfortable with it.
Sure.
In my church, in my parish, for instance, we have they're right to the more contemporary Eucharist. There are 4 Eucharistic prayers, A, B, C, and D. When the bishop visited, he was a little floored because we were doing Rite C, which is the, people call it the Star Trek.
That's right.
The planets in their courses, this island, Earth, our home, sort of stuff. Well, I said, well, Bishop, every year we do A all this year, then B all this year, and C all this year. So this is my 11th year. We're just finishing C. It's the 3rd time through. Now that we're in Advent, we're now doing D, and then next Advent we'll start A again. He said, well, nobody does that. Most parishes just stick with A and maybe B on a special day.
Yeah, A and B, absolutely, yeah.
But I said, hey, I've got this book. I might as well use it. But the thing is, after you use C for a whole year, it works. It's pretty nice. I like it. It's language.
It's language. It's fun. It's liturgy. Now, let's move on. We talked about that.
Oh, but I think the point I was trying to say, these things that are happening right now, as you mentioned, Seven, lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of praying is the law of believing, the so-called Anglican mantra. These prayer book reforms are going to be of more consequence than anything Justin Welby says in Parliament, anything that is said on Channel 4 News. Because the things that are happening in prayer book reform in the Episcopal Church, the Church of England, South Africa, they matter because they're the little moves that turn the tiller of the ship that send it into a direction. Yeah. Justin Welby, he's yesterday's news already.
Almost. And
we can't leave the ACNA out of this because every so often they do this filioque clause nonsense, and
nonsense. It's not nonsense. It's important.
No, it's not. I mean, my goodness, we have to get closer to the Orthodox, and so we're going to drop it. we're going to put an asterisk in the prayer book, and this, you know, our Anglican heritage, you know, believes in the teaching of what is contained in that clause, and just to junk it so that we can be more ecumenical and be close to the Orthodox. It's these plaid shirt, hairy chin fellows who love liturgy who make all these problems for the ACNA.
Now, in all my travels, we visited probably 15 or 16 different churches this summer in our travels. 2 of those churches did it the Orthodox way, Anglican churches. You know, and I thought that was cool. Yeah, hey, going out there on the high road there. Okay, you know. So,
well, was the director wearing skinny jeans?
Not going to mention. But
okay.
I will say he was a newbie. How's that go?
Okay.
Newbie.
Okay.
All right. Let's go on and talk about Perth has dropped the chastity requirement for clergy. Now, we know why. Okay, we had this in the Church of England, where the deans of the cathedrals and others were allowed to have male roommates. Wink, 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 wink. And here we go. There's no longer a chastity clause proposed in Perth. Why are we doing this, George?
Well, it's not to prevent swinging singles, Dean Martin 60 types from entering the ministry. This is the way to normalize the gay lifestyle. Promiscuity the sociological studies tell us that monogamous same-sex relationships are rather rare, especially in men.
Mm-hmm.
And
but so hold on, they do occur.
They do occur, but they're the exception, not the norm.
All right.
Most gay and chastity and monogamy have different understandings in the gay community. Mm-hmm. So the sociological literature tells us. So you can have a life partner, but you can still have partners outside of that, mm-hmm. and still be considered in a faithful relationship in the
Correct.
gay community. Whereas in a marriage, male-female marriage, if you have a partner outside of that, that is sinful and it's ground for divorce. Well, the Diocese of Perth, under such Archbishop Kay Goldsworthy, has put forward a motion at their synod, which she has approved, which changes the definitions of what clergy conduct is. So, for instance, and that's a diocese by diocese thing. You know, clergy in the Episcopal Church must lead a moral, godly, and upright life. I know a girl, a female priest of my acquaintance, who's been married 5 times, and she's still a priest in good standing out in California. Central Florida, that just is, it's not possible. Gay behavior is genital gay relationships are essentially forbidden in my diocese, where they're celebrated, and normalized in other dioceses, and the bishop's gay, because the definition changes from place to place of what is, so we're now seeing this Episcopal disease spread to Australia, so that Sydney has one understanding of what chastity and wholesome living is, while Perth and Brisbane and some other dioceses have a very different understanding. And so that they can both say that, yes, we're following the canons and living a godly, righteous, and sober life, because we define it differently than you do.
Wasn't there just a bishop in the Episcopal Church who was stood down for having a 5th affair with his secretary, Marcus or Andrew, whatever his name is? Sorry.
Well, no, Mark Andrus of,
yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
California.
Yeah.
But it was a male-female.
No, I get that, but just saying that different definitions for different bishops. Let's move on to some more news. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you got to say, if I were the PR manager for the Diocese of Perth, in the face of all the clergy scandals that are coming out, to make a big thing about dropping chastity just does not promote confidence in your brand, okay?
No. Doesn't it? All right. Last week we talked about why we don't always include clergy in our news discussions, and I think it was half an hour in. And one of the reasons is high-profile archbishops and bishops are held to a higher standard, and we want to be sure before we come forward with stories of laypersons and regular clergy that we have all the facts right, and we will wait weeks before we report on it. Here's a story that's been out for a week or two.
Yeah, we talked about the Ed Monk story.
Yeah.
And where Monk was accused by the Diocese of Dallas for financial improprieties, and we basically sat on it for a week or so until he filed his response where he said, no, this is all untrue. So when we told the story, we were able to offer that here's what the diocese says, and here's what Monk says, so that we're not just running with the diocesan press release, because you can't trust those anymore.
However, when you're sitting in jail with bail set at $300,000 and your bishop has come down on you, we're going to mention it, George.
and you've admitted to the police the truth of the charges, then we've got even though I don't have an independent statement, we've got both sides. At least according, I trust a police affidavit a little more than a diocesan press release.
Here's the headline. ACNA Armed Forces Deacon in Alaska arrested for child abuse. Craig Daltrey indicted last week on 2 charges. He has been suspended by Bishop Derek Jones. Why would he be suspended, George?
Daltrey was a contract employee of the U.S. Army. He taught religious education at Fort Wainwright, which is the big Army base in Fairbanks. He was also the deacon, I think it was St. George's Anglican Church, which is the Diocese Cascadia chaplain mission in Fairbanks. He was on the staff there. Well, he was arrested, and the Alaska State Trooper who filed the report with the police, we were informed by the Diocese of Cascadia. I sat on it for a few days because I wanted to, basically see where this went. And being first is not as important as being right. Then the media in Fairbanks, TV and newspaper, came out with it, and they published excerpts from the police things. And here's the story. Evidently, this fellow said a minor, under 12, I think, approached him and solicited him for genital sexual contact. And he admitted having 2 instances of that in 2024, and the complainant said it went back to 2021, but he's only been charged with the 2 from 2024. So he is essentially, according to the police affidavit, admitted child abuse. Now, here's the shocking thing. This guy was a safeguarding officer for his parish. He was the guy who taught the classes that the insurance companies have us take about what you do and don't do with kids. He worked for the U.S. Army, and they've got their own safeguarding regiment that's just as rigorous
as the church,
as the churches. Short of putting a drone above his head at all times, what more could the church do? Evil's going to happen sometimes, no matter how hard you prepare and teach and instruct.
And it's usually a person of this variety where they are involved in the safeguarding. They know the rules. Somehow they've creeped into the system. Now, in as such, well, can't we prevent this? We can't prevent everything. We have to hold those accountable when we find them. And I hope this man is held fully accountable to the laws of the state of Alaska and any federal laws he's violated, any Army laws. I truly believe if he's guilty, he should be held fully accountable. I hope he has the opportunity in his spiritual life to repent of this and to learn from it.
This sort of thing is so devastating, though, to the clergy especially when you're starting off building a mission congregation, building, trying to expand into fertile growth for church, Fairbanks and whatnot. To have one of your people betray you. Not only has he abused the child, he's betrayed his colleagues, he's betrayed the people of the church, he's betrayed his bishop, he's betrayed the army. And, he's not been found guilty, so I don't wish, in the court of law.
Allegedly.
And the canonical church process basically suspended until we get a legal decision, because he can't really defend himself when he's just sitting in a prison cell and with whatnot, and we'll let the army do the investigations, the state troopers. But these abuse, here's the thing that the start of the show, we talked about Welby and abuse, and not acknowledging and not taking it seriously. No one has said that Welby's a pervert. No one has said he's an abuser. But his attitude has been, protect the institution, not the victim. And here, the Diocese of Cascadia contacted me, the press, and I've been sitting on it longer than they have. In fact, they were immediately out there and sharing this. So it's a tragedy, it's a shame, but hey, they're doing the right thing.
They are. And as an institution, they're doing the right thing. I think they've learned from what happened in the Chicago area. They learned from other things, that if this is happening, we're going to be completely transparent. We're not hiding anything. Who needs to know? Everyone needs to know. This is what Christians do when we come across evil within our church. We hold them accountable, we turn them over to the law, we pray for them, and we hope to lead them into a life of repentance. That is our job. Anything short of that is not the church. It's policy. It's not going to work. And it's nice to see this happen. I'm glad the ACNA is being very proactive in this. But yeah, you just. A 12-year-old approached you. That's what you're going with. My brain just whatever. Okay, let's go back to bureaucracy in the church. There's a report called the Civitas Report. Is that how I'm pronouncing that right?
Civitas is a London think tank. They put out a report that we've put out their stuff every so often. Okay, but they're a think tank. They put out a report yesterday, or at the end of last week, on bureaucracy in the Church of England. And Kevin, you are going to be so shocked and surprised.
There's none, is there? Well, I'm going to read the subheadline here. These administrative positions. I'm going to start that over. The report finds bureaucrats have overrun the Church of England. These administrative positions include human resources jobs and a series of politicalized roles such as diversity, social justice, LGBTQ, and net zero officers, the report has found. So that's going to continue the mission of the church, right? These admins are going to grow the church or just suck it dry.
Well, it's sucking it dry of money, because right now, quote from the report, dioceses across the country now employ so many people that on average there's one administrator to every 3.5 priests. One administrator for every 3.5 priests.
That's like public education in America.
I can remember Fitzsimmons Allison, the former Bishop of South Carolina, saying that when he was starting off, the administration of the Diocese of South Carolina, which had 100 plus clergy in this, that was he and his secretary. Yep. That was it. That was it. He and his secretary. And now in the Church of England, there's one administrator for every 3.5 people. And in Truro Diocese, which is Cornwall, the end of the earth in England, there are 39 diocesan officers and 41 clergy. Look at it. I mean, just imagine that for a second. It's almost like 1-to-1 in Truro, diocesan support people and clergy. Now, nationally, the Church of England spends 21% of its money on administrative costs, which is double that of equally large charities like Oxfam or the Royal Lifeboat Institute, National Lifeboat Institute. So that Welby was brought in to bring management and professionalism to the Church of England after Rowan Williams. And Welby, instead of emulating the best of the corporate world, emulated the British civil service. And we are now in a situation where bureaucrats are hired to manage bureaucrats, will hire and manage administrators. And these people all make more money than your average priest. And so that 1 or 2 synods ago, there was a question put where these issues were raised about the number of bureaucrats. And I put it on the Zoom question and answer time. I asked this question of Stephen Cottrell, who said, oh, no, these numbers aren't right. We get value from money from our lesbian, gay officers, for our chaplains to the Islamic community, for our, this, that, and the other. Well,
this is nothing new. We're going back to pre-Y2K, 1998, 1999. I was employed as a contractor to the Diocese of Connecticut. I did their web design and web stuff and hosted their websites back then. And I remember visiting their offices on Asylum Avenue in Hartford, Connecticut, and discovering they had this mansion that was their headquarters. And there was 38 or 40 different positions within this diocesan office of stuff I've never heard of. Education to whatever other, department, whatever. And so this was back then. This is 38. So they had 38 then. They had 179 churches, probably 165 clergy at the time. That's 1/3. Not quite 1/3. That's 1/5. So that's crazy. It's no different now in the Church of England.
Well, and they had to sell that mansion.
They did.
They've had to move out it. They've had to lay off all these people.
Yeah, no money.
No money, and in some cases, it's a mismatch of resources. I'm sure somebody gave them that mansion way back when. Mm-hmm. And probably for you to wire that place, cable that place, was a nightmare because you got all these rooms and different people.
It was before
they had
Wi-Fi.
to use the resource they had to use the resources they had. But at the same time, they make these decisions about what do we do with these? Well, we've always done it this way. We've always had, a newspaper editor and 2 reporters. Do we really need that anymore?
No. Who knows? Okay, we got time for one more story. You want to do 6 or you want to do 7? I think 7 would be more fun.
Okay, 7's more fun.
Okay. New cardinal in the Catholic Church. That's the Roman Catholic Church. That's the church where people swim the Tiber to get to. The new cardinal says, listen, Judas was saved. You're not going to believe this. I read the New Testament. The New Testament says that Judas was a participant in the First Supper where Jesus consecrated the bread and the wine, and he offered it to Judas, who he knew who was going to betray him. And it was an offering of forgiveness. If Jesus can do that to Judas, why can't we have the open table and allow the Eucharist to be conducted with and for everyone, the worst sinner ever to the best sinner ever? There's the best sinner. And I'm like, George, that's going to be a great story, because we know so many people who say, yeah, but it's the Roman Catholic Church. They got better things to do. Let's talk a little bit about the story and our new cardinal.
Oh, my. Pablo David will be made a cardinal on December 7th. He's in that batch of the new consistory. He's in his 60s. He's Filipino. So he's going to be here a long time, and he's potentially Pope material. He's young enough. He's one of the Francis team, and I'll call him Cardinal, even though it's 2 days premature.
Sure.
He said the Eucharist should be given to anyone, even to grave sinners, and that Jesus gave the Eucharist to Judas as a sign of forgiveness at the Last Supper. So every so often we love teasing one of our former colleagues about his desire to become a Catholic because, it's so pure and they do it right. And this is the one true church where, and then we point out and the answers are yes, but. So and so and so. Okay, so this new cardinal is, saying that, and he made this homily in the consecration of a bishop he was consecrating in the Philippines. The old rules of who can receive Eucharistic discipline, there should not be any rules.
Yeah.
In the Episcopal Church, we have a little disclaimer saying all baptized Christians are welcome.
Mm-hmm. Say with that.
That's out
Yeah.
That is out the door for Cardinal David.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be baptized. It's not that, you're a divorced Catholic who's remarried. I'm sorry you can't come. No. You're welcome with Cardinal David. You are living in you're a married gay couple living in a life.
Grave sin.
The church in grave sin, a sin that cries out to heaven for punishment, the church would say. Mm-hmm. You're welcome to receive communion. Eucharistic discipline is contrary to the aims of the Eucharist, Cardinal David is saying. Yeah. I'll read you a quote. Look, the one who received the first morsel of bread was Judas at the Last Supper.
Sure.
It was Jesus' way of transforming a meal of betrayal into a meal of forgiveness. We are all like broken bowls ourselves, but the good news is there's no brokenness that cannot be healed by the precious blood of the Lamb. There's more precious binding agent than gold. Now, I believe the point from the all broken bowls ourselves. But Jesus' way of transforming a meal of betrayal, Judas had already taken the 30 pieces of silver, was all set to betray Jesus. But Jesus, like Joe Biden, was doing a preemptive pardon of Judas. Hunter, we don't know what you did, but whatever it was, and whatever you're going to do, you're off the hook. Cardinal David is adopting, I would call, an Anglican view of the sacraments.
Amen.
He is not, if you take where he's going to his logical conclusion, the real presence of Christ being really, truly present in the body and blood, and you give it to people who do not believe this or are not worthy of it, you are committing a sacrament in Catholic sacramental theology. Now, in our articles of religion say you can receive the body and blood of Jesus Christ, but if you don't believe, you're just needlessly chewing and drinking, or words to that effect. So it has no effect upon you if you do not have that faith in you beforehand. What Cardinal David is sort of coming up with a hybrid, which is there's a magical element to this that you don't need to believe, but if you don't believe, it doesn't really matter. I think we'll see some people getting very angry at Cardinal David because he's just jumping on the sorts of things that traditional Catholics just are horrified with Francis. And this is one of Francis's choices to be a cardinal.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting theological question. Who should be able to partake in the Lord's Supper? How repentant do you have to be? I mean, now, we can go from Lutheranism, certainly Anglicanism, Roman Catholicism. A lot of people in denominations take it a little differently of how repentant you need to be to take communion. Now, if you look at the first Eucharist, and second, third, and fourth, there is not in Scripture a point where the participants had to repent before they took the Eucharist.
Yeah, there's no prayer of humble access at the Last Supper.
Yeah.
And Cardinal David, for non-Anglicans, the prayer of humble access, we are not worthy to come to this table. It's what little things we say just before the lights go on and the curtain comes up and Eucharist is distributed. But, the whole Catholic practice of going to confession before you receive communion, it's pretty pointless under David's worldview, that anybody can receive, because it's a meal of forgiveness. It's the sacrament is the forgiveness itself, not the act of confession, not the act of contrition, not being right with your neighbor, but rather receiving that. It's almost a magical thing. Now, that's not Anglicanism. I don't know what that is, but you take it. But David is sort of peeling away the proper preparation, proper repentance, proper statement of what this does, to saying it's a meal of forgiveness alone. Not alone, but it's a meal of forgiveness that can do the work that you don't have to do in your heart. Is that what he's saying?
I don't know. If you ask me, you peel the Eucharist completely down to its final layer. It's about Jesus. It's about the completeness of who Jesus is revealed, and your role in that. And your role is to partake. I'm sorry to get so theological and unscripted, but
No. We should say that there's this one Episcopal woman priest who tells us abortion's a sacrament. So
a blessing.
A blessing and a sacrament. It's a sacramental blessing. Mm-hmm. So picking out one nut job who has a collar, whether they're Catholic, Orthodox, Episcopalian, Anglican, does not the whole team, spoil. So I wonder what they're going to say. I wonder if when Cardinal David goes to get his little red hat, I wonder if somebody's going to sit him aside and say, you may want to issue a clarification or two.
Yeah, in fact, if you clarify this, ruby slippers are in your future. Absolutely.
We'll give you a tassel to go with your little red hat.
All right. So a quick update. George said, hey, you need to talk about this on the show. And in unscripted terms, George and I, you tuned in this program to hear our thoughts and what's going on in the news. And I'm sorry if I bumped the table there. And you like to see the jovial relationship we have in friendship on screen. And I want you to know that, God uses this in what he uses it for. And we are very thankful and humble. And we understand that we have very little to do with that except showing up. And in showing up, it's what we're supposed to do. And I try to be Kevin all the time. And I was called to be Kevin the other day when I was visiting a repair shop for the RV. And I got into a conversation with a lady there. And she just had some questions because she was struggling. And God used me, not because I'm holier than anybody else or smarter than anybody else, as you guys know, I'm not. But he used me to help this person have more of a reflection on her faith and to continue it in more earnest than before. I'll leave it at that. But, we are always there to defend our faith and always there on call. And it's not just this big picture of unscripted; it's everywhere. And I think it needs to be said that, Kevin and George, why don't you report on the good news all the time? Well, good news doesn't solve for one thing, but we get to live the good news, in our lives. George gets to witness to people all the time about the gospel and what it means. As a priest, I get to witness to it all the time as a layperson because I truly believe in what I do, even though I am not worthy to believe it. I do believe it. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching episode 893 of Anglican Unscripted.